We have time for questions. I want to ask you, if anything goes wrong, as you put it, we will all die. But if we're going in the wrong direction, who will be able to stop it?
It's a good question. It's going to be tough. New technology is helping machines and apps, get smarter about the environment and how they interact with the world, faster and faster at an accelerated rate. And there will be a time where we place more and more of our critical infrastructure and responsibilities in the hands of machines, and we expect our apps to do the same. And it's just something that we're going to have to be very responsible about.
What's your take on that one?
My take is that we're actually very lucky. We're lucky because we are able to make very solid predictions about when we're going to face problems like superintelligent AIs. We're able to make predictions based on Moore's law, etc., on when we're going to face these challenges. So we're able to look ahead.
Yeah.
The difficulty is that we need to increase awareness. We need people to understand the challenges that humanity faces over the next generation or so, and begin to think about them now before they smack us in the face.
Yeah. Don't forget. Question. We have a microphone coming up.
Yeah, I'm just a bit curious about that timeline. When will we have computers that are as smart as us? How far away are we from computers being as smart as humans?
There are a number of different predictions on this. Probably the current ETA, estimated time of ascension, is probably about 2045. But actually, now that these kinds of System 1 thinking chips are coming out, some of the revisions are being brought down to about 2040 or so. So presumably, within the lifetime of everyone in this room.
And your timeline for the things
it's
that you're
happen,
talking about?
I think for the simpler step of apps and content and machines perceiving the environment in the sense of being able to interact and have these experiences and, have a visually impaired person walk into a mapped building and receive audible instructions about how to navigate, about being able to reconstruct crime scenes so that you can virtually explore them afterwards. I think this world is going to happen much, much faster. I think it's going to start popping up in the next 18 months. We're going to start to see it. So, it's going to fundamentally change everything from how people create interactive movies, marketing materials, everything. And the trend is hitting 2015, early 2016. It's very near term.
Actually, two questions, one for you both. Quick, is this what's your take on the difference between being aware of something or sort of perceiving it and understanding it? Because that's sort of a different.
Yeah, it's a really good question. Perception, and it's why I kind of want to be careful when I defined it. I kind of want to be careful. Perception is simply the spatial awareness of your environment. You know the dimensions. You know where the room you're in is in relation to other rooms. Perhaps I know, hey, there's furniture here. Maybe I know what the furniture is. But it doesn't imply a deep decision-making or intelligent capability.
Your robot doesn't know that there's beer in the fridge.
You'd have to kind of sneak, and the developer would have to tell it that ahead of time. Yes.
Just very quick. Do you believe in the singularity? Is this where we're heading at?
I think that it's certainly something that we need to plan for, and we need to be aware of, and we're not sure how we're going to end up, like whether it's going to be a bang, a whimper, or happy joy for everyone. But I think that we don't need to wait for intelligence equivalent to humans. I think that the ability for this kind of System 1 intuitive self-learning, I think that that's actually going to change machines in a big way, because now instead of having to program something, machines are able to program themselves. And it's that self-programming ability that is something that's probably going to slip under our radar, and we're not going to realize just what a huge, big deal that actually is until maybe it's too late.
Hello. So, Amir, you describe your approach to mapping a room as cheating. And I don't know if that's fair. I mean, how much, in your view, and I'm curious in your perspective too now, does this differ from how we approach the problem?
Exactly. That's a really excellent point. You know, the big leap here is that prior to, you know, these current technology trends, the reason we're seeing this now, the reason I felt, you know, it interesting to speak to this is, you know, prior to this, apps and robots and everything didn't have knowledge of the room they're in because they always came in with just what's in front of me, or like a robot, its whole purpose of existence is don't bump into the thing in front of me. You know, your app might be able to put your IKEA couch right in your living room, but we never before gave it a map of the room ahead of time. And researchers consider this cheating because you're giving it the answer before it walks into the room. And so it's true. When the way a human walks into a room is like, we walk around, we build a mental model of the room. You know, I talk to Nell beforehand, I tell her where everything is, you know, I convey information, and then she walks in the room with knowledge, and I walk in the room a second time, and I already know where I'm going. So yeah, it is the same way, you know, a lifetime of experience, you know, years and years of learning what objects mean and what rooms are like. You know, the things that take a human a lifetime of experience to develop, you know, I know what pipes are like, I know what wood and brick are like. We can now give to machines and your mobile phones by pre-scanning the room ahead of time. So I guess we're just kind of accelerating this process, not cheating. Thank you.
I thought a lot about singularity for a while, and what consists to be a human, and how could we possibly preserve our species if that is not too extreme to expect. And one of the things that even through this conference I thought even more is about empathy. Maybe that's one thing we should maybe focus on teaching machines about empathy that makes us, if anything, very hopeful and human so we can understand each other. But then you talked about human values. So my question is empathy one of those human values that you find important to teach the machines? And also, then I don't want to sound hopeless, but what happens if machines has their own values and they judge them more important than human values?
Really, really important questions. I'll put it this way. Psychopaths are often assumed to have zero empathy, right? That they can't understand the damage they do to other people. It's not true. Psychopaths have probably more empathy than most regular people do. It's just they don't give a crap. So teaching empathy, having a machine that understands how to hurt humans and how to manipulate humans is not enough. We have to ensure that machines understand values. And it's those values that will ensure that machine ethics don't end up killing us out of kindness. Mm-hmm. So it's being able to understand what makes life important to us.
Do you think we will have groups advocating regulations in this area?
I think that the world is an island of different regulations. And there's plenty of places to go and do interesting research where nobody's looking particularly closely. So I don't have too much faith in regulations being able to solve the problem. I think that awareness and doing a heck of a lot of research before these kinds of problems really hit us is what's crucial.
I'm curious about the idea that rather than the singularity, but the concept that Andy Clark puts forward about natural-born cyborgs, and that we're distinguishing here very much between man and machine. And I'm actually interested in the moment when actually, we are much more comfortable with the concept that we are part. We've always used this stick as a to poke things, and even from then we're using machine to extend ourselves, our sense of self. So I'm curious if you guys could comment a little bit about that fear of this thing of the machine that's going to be the other thing that could destroy us, as much as the idea that we are naturally inclined to incorporate the machine within us as well as without us.
That's a really good point. Amir, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I think we're already becoming cyborgs. I mean, our phones are attached to us. We're almost never without internet. We see the world through the lens of our screen. And, next generation technology like the Fitbit, we're augmenting our own humanity, like to track our number of steps, and that's influencing our behavior. That already is a feedback loop, just like a machine would do. We're already when we have a connected home with I can control my lights, I can control my TV, whatever, with my phone, that's kind of cybernetic. I'm one with my environment. And so we're just going to we're already closer there than perhaps we'd like to admit. What's the difference when we start having goggles strapped to our faces all the time? Or what's the difference when it's embedded in a contact lens? We're not so far from that already, I think.
So this is mostly for Neil. My understanding from AI and the AI courses I have and machine learning is that everything is still set up or built up through a set of rules. You might not understand why the machine actually learns what it does or chooses the option it does. How does this new version of machine learning actually differ so much so it actually can become a killing machine and not just learn new information without us actually knowing how it obtained it, but actually start changing it and varying it so much so it actually starts making its own decisions?
Well, one of the interesting things about a machine that is self-learning, that is truly able to adapt its assumptions about the world around us, is that kind of like how we wouldn't expose a child to violence or pornography. We don't want that child's developing mind to be disturbed. I think that perhaps we need to be careful about how machines themselves learn and what we expose them to, in case the assumptions that get developed over time may not be what we're looking for. Exactly, yeah. No Terminator.
Hey, I thought it was interesting that you mentioned that when understanding of perception, that you define that as a spatial perception. Because the one thing I thought when you said that was yes, it may be three-dimensional, but it's only one dimension of our really human perception, which involves so much more. And I guess I have less of a question, but more of a point to raise. I feel in this conference we've spoken so much about storytelling and images and forgotten that we also live in a world where our other senses play a really dominant role, not just on how we communicate, but on how we experience and how we tell stories. And those senses being things like touch. Without touch, you wouldn't even know where to stand, and we forget that because we wouldn't have a sense of gravity. Science has yet to understand what that means. How do you explain if a touch is friendly or loving or aggressive? Smell, another one. That's something you walk into a room and you say something is kind of off. It's your sense of smell that's picking up on stuff that we've now focused so much on our visual sense, that we forget about that. And so, yeah, if you guys know of anything happening in those fields, it'd be awesome.
I think that's a really, really interesting point. I've always wondered that myself. I think it's just our technology is really good at blasting stuff into our eyeballs and into our ear canals, and not so good at other things. And maybe one day we'll have future nanomaterial clothes that will replicate senses of touch, and then that could be part of content and experience. Maybe we'll have smell-o-vision, but I think that's a really good point, and it's limitation of technology and just such a huge part of our the percentage of data that we process is overwhelmingly audio-visual. That even though sense of smell and olfactory is a really huge component of how we form memories, and touch is so critical to us. If you're put on an engineering graph or engineering pie chart, audio-visual is overwhelmingly dominates our inputs to the world. But I completely agree with your point. I like it.
I have a question that is close to yours, in a way. As long as in order to design a machine that works like a human, you need to know what a human is and why we work and act the way we do. And to me, it feels strange to say that machines can be like human when we don't know why we fall in love, for instance.
That's a good question. That's very good. Maybe we'd like to think that. I had a friend who cut up a rat brain and put it in a petri dish, just like little pieces of rat brain, and he stimulated it, and just from he attached it to like a robot, and he stimulated it, and the rat brains learned how to respond to like a robot that needed to walk. So where I'm going with that is, yes, we're very complicated, but maybe not so much as we think. At the end of the day, our brains are, instead of having a few hundred neurons in a petri dish, our brains are hundreds of millions, billions of neurons, and many billions of simple interactions build up to our emotions and our experiences of love and our ability to create and experience and share the world and perceive the world. But at least the machine learning and the machine perception point of view is, it's not a very humanist thing to say, but we break it down, it's probably just billions of very simple interactions, and we believe that's a code that can be cracked.
One last question.
Who was it?
I was wondering, might this ethical question about empathy work in both directions? Like, when we're creating a machine, an AI, that is self-conscious and is its own being, basically, how respectful should we treat it? Like, the companies developing such things probably want to make a profit out of it and exploit it. And as we can see in our treating of animals, that's not always that good, right?
That's the Robocop question.
It's a huge question. I do wonder how AI rights may become a really big issue over the next 20 to 30 years. Seems like nuts, but you don't know how these things turn out. But I'm actually hoping that there's a chance that as machines and humans become more alike, perhaps machines can actually help us to live our lives in a more human way. Perhaps by having seasoned ethical guidance from synthetic intelligences, we may actually turn into better people over time ourselves. And if that's the case, then maybe we may be more kind to our synthetic friends.
Amir, Nell, thank you for a wonderful session.